the next talk is definitely one of the highlights in the whole program. Very excited about it. I was very excited to actually meet her beforehand, and didn't know who I was meeting. I'm like really, I walk around always a bit like naive. Don't know who I'm encountering. I didn't read the book, I didn't watch the movie. It's always the same. But then I met the person. And we're very grateful that she could come. She flew in all the way from New Mexico, and she embodies the kind of feminine wisdom that in the West we are really, really craving for. She, as I said, comes from New Mexico, where she is an elder of the Diné. The Diné. I had to pronounce that 50 times out loud. And by remembering who she is allowing us all to remember who we are. I will name her by her original name, and I wish you an amazing experience. Here she is, Woman Stand Shining. This is Rediscovering the Original Instructions, Indigenous Wisdom in the Service of Thriving Life.
So I want to say greetings to you on this afternoon. Yat e. Yat e. I come from the Diné Nation. People know us as Navajo. And many people know that name from Hollywood. But we actually call ourselves Diné. We've never called ourselves Navajo. And it's a great honor to be here in this part of the Mother Earth that we now call Portugal, and this part of the Mother Earth that we now call Boomland. And I've been having this really beautiful sense lately that culture is not actually a human construct at all. That culture, and language even, is the Mother Earth expressing herself as human being in any particular place on her body. And so in this particular place on her body, it's very warm at this time of year when the sun, this holy star, is in relationship to this Mother Earth. And there are certain trees that grow easily here and some that do not, and et cetera. And so all of these distinguishing factors of relationship between water, between this holy star, between elevation and et cetera, end up creating a certain circumstance for relationship between a human being and this Mother Earth. So I really acknowledge that expression of her arising through this part of the Mother Earth here. And in that way, I greet this land of Portugal that we now call Portugal. And I greet her from the land of my humans who have been expressing themselves as Mother Earth in a particular place for a very long time. Is that making sense? Yeah. And so the Diné people have it's part of our creation story that we have a migration. It's not something that we get from the ologists, as I call them, the anthropologists, the archaeologists, and all those guys and gals. But that's also part of our story. And then where we are now today, our traditional homeland, goes back thousands of years. So the Mother Earth, we might say, has been expressing herself as Diné people for a very long time. And so from that part of the Mother Earth, I come to greet this part of the Mother Earth. And it feels super, super fine, I have to say. It really does. I'm having a fabulous time. And plenty of contact high, I'll tell you what. So I'd like to start out with something a little bit serious as a way of, one, calling out to the spirit of this land and calling out to the guardian spirits of life in this part of the Mother Earth. And my experience in Europe is that sometimes that doesn't happen frequently. Not from ancient culture and understanding to ancient culture and understanding. So I know that I have a brother here in these parts who's been doing some ceremony from the same lineage that I carry. Actually, the name Woman Stands Shining, which I asked to be introduced here, comes from my being adopted into the Lakota spiritual way of life. And that's another people that live in what we call Turtle Island, what's now called the United States. And so in that way, I was given this name, Wayakpa Najiwi. But first, I want to introduce myself to you, and especially to this land, to the way this light is coming to this land, to the way this water has come to rest here. All these beautiful trees, standing nation, we say. So the whole community, everybody, including the five-fingered ones. And so the way that we formally introduce ourselves is we say, She'e'iya, tachi nashli, aro ashi ibashishchi, ma'idesh geshne dashanale, tlavshi daushiche, aguatao stani nashli. Doesn't that feel good to hear that? That's not Latin-based, baby. That's out of the box. So it's always a pleasure to speak the language of this ancient way that the earth is expressing herself through human beings. So I wanted to start out by singing a grandmother calling song. You're looking pretty lively. Maybe I can ask you to go ahead and stand if you would. You know, I was just working with this group of 15 and 16-year-olds. God, they're amazing. Right? That's our time when we're pretty certain that we're immortal, indestructible. And there's one mentor of mine that says, we were meant to launch from that place into being the beings that we now look to in our history as being these super beings. But that was supposed to be our launching off place for us too. But anyway, what I was saying to them is, when we come and we approach things with respect, and when we can approach things, if we can muster it, if we can bring it up inside of ourselves, and we can muster reverence, wow. So when we approach things with respect and reverence, they respond to us in an entirely different way than when we just walk up to them and grab them and etc. So when I first arrived at Boomland, they drove me up behind the back of the stage. I happened to ride over with the opening band of the opening of the dance temple yesterday. So I got to go. I got up on the stage just to see what it was like to look out there and see what they were gonna see. What a place, huh? But the first thing I did was to go and offer tobacco at the lake. That's the source of water, we could say, or it's also pointing to the source of water that is keeping all of us alive. And are we really experiencing in this heat how much we need this one? I am. This is life. This is life. This is life. This is what binds all living things together as family. And maybe some of you were a part of the prayer that the five-fingered ones made at Standing Rock. The five-fingered ones made a stand on behalf of life by standing for the water at Standing Rock. So if you were over wherever you were praying about that, you were a part of that. So we say this binds all living things together as family because we all depend on it. My clan grandfather says, I have a problem with that word it because this is a being. Because this is not only life, this is alive. This has consciousness, this one. And it keeps a record of all of our ancestors. So every single one of us in this room, all of our ancestors, from whatever part of the world you are from, and I know we're representing from all over, all of our ancestors had a drink from this very water right here. All of the knowledge that they held, all of their ceremonies, all of the sacredness that they knew, they spoke into this water. And so it is present with us right here. And so today, even as we're having this little gathering here, meeting in this tent, not Boomfest, that's going to be recorded in this water. Your presence, your witnessing, your heart, and your love to come here at this time. So I want to acknowledge that one. So, let's do it formally. So we're going to say that this is east over this way, and I'm going to address the four directions. So we'll start out all facing east, and then we're going to come around here, and then we're going to come around here, and then we're going to come around here. Okay? Can we? Yeah. Okay, so let's start in the east. So this is a grandmother calling song. This was a song that I asked for to bring to a gathering such as this one. There are many songs, some of them very ancient. And I'm never quite sure about bringing them into a place that's not the actual ceremony, although my whole life, I hope, is a ceremony. So I asked for a song that would cause no one any pain to sing, to call on the holy beings, and they gave me this song. ya, eh ha ya, we ha ya, eh ha ya, we ya, hey ya, we do, eh oh. Yeah. So you can make yourselves comfortable. So I wanted to sing that song because I wanted to call in the holy beings of this land, the holy beings that respond when we approach with respect and reverence. And the other reason that I sing the song is because it helps me understand what I'm supposed to say. So in some ways it feels like a very short amount of time, but we're going to ask for that way of expansion to come and meet us here to accommodate everything that really must be said now. So, where to enter this great tapestry? So our topic is reminding us about original instructions. Just curious, how many people here have ever heard that phrase, the original instructions? Some of us here. Wow, that's quite a phrase, isn't it? The original instructions. So, one of the ways that I've been trying to describe what original instructions might mean is this. So, in this modern time, I guess we could say, if there is such a thing, but we'll call it that, the five-fingered ones have this thing that they say to each other. They say, well, my truth is X, right? And especially if you're in a discussion with somebody that has come up to a debate with somebody and is kind of heading a little bit higher than that, when somebody says that phrase, well, my truth is, right, that's the line in the sand. It's saying, watch out, because if you come across that line, we're not sure what's going to happen, right? Because that's my truth. So I've been thinking about that. And in one way, each of us, as being a living member of this sacred hoop of life, we have sovereignty. We have sovereignty. But also this, our little living friend who bears witness to everything we're doing right there, this little tree or bush or whatever, this one also has sovereignty. These little ants that are picking up everything we drop, they have sovereignty. So I'm not proposing we're the only ones who have sovereignty, but we have sovereignty. And we also have free will. And so, with our truth, it seems, we are allowed to do whatever this guy up here, or gal, can dream up, the intellect. The intellect loves to dream up stuff to do. I mean, take a look around. And so, what's been occurring to me is that we are feeling that we are entitled to live out whatever truth we can imagine. So right now, we're kind of having an intersection of a collective dreaming of truth, which we're calling Boomfest. But there are other collaborations going on out there called Wall Street, called the Euro, called fracking, right? So people are doing this everywhere in their own way. But what I might propose here is this. Yes, it seems that we have been given this free will and ability to do whatever we can dream up to do. But what I would propose to you is it might not be possible for every one of us to have whatever truth we can imagine and also have thriving life on this Mother Earth. So it seems that in this beautiful, amazing wizardress, Mother Earth, this fountain of life, this fountain of creativity, this fountain of diversity, this fountain of weather, and so many incredible things, there are certain principles that guide having life here. So this might be one way of trying to describe what we mean when we say the original instructions. So some indigenous cultures, and I'm going to pause for just a moment to say, what do we mean when we say indigenous culture? So again, you heard one description about the Mother Earth expressing herself as human being, right? So what I'm going to call indigenous culture, just so we can be clear, is people who are of place. So people who have lived in a place and come to have deep relationship with place over a long period of time, 1,000 years, 2,000 years, 3,000 years, 5,000 years, 10,000 years. And there, you can find these people in every part of the Mother Earth. They're still there. You know, I encounter people sometimes who meet me, and I say that I'm a Native American from the United States, and they will look right at me and say, wow, I didn't know you guys still existed. And I'm like, honey, yeah, we still exist. We're still here. We are still here, so you can still find us. But we have been under siege, and we have been under assault for quite some time. No doubt about that. So indigenous peoples, people who are of place, people who have made relationship with place, I'm saying that our elders tell us that we were given, and my understanding is that all the branches, all the many diverse branches of humanity were given the understanding of the laws that govern thriving life of this place. Now here I am, bringing up law at Boomfest. So, you know, we were having this little discussion yesterday, and so, you know, it seems like, I feel like, certainly in my generation, and certainly for a great part of my life, so I'm not just pointing out here, I'm saying it happened in here too, I felt like laws felt kind of restrictive, right? Pretty restrictive. But if we think about what happens, what the difference is in our lives when we acknowledge, like say if we were to co-acknowledge, have a co-agreement that all life, all the different forms of life are sovereign beings, what does that life look like? We haven't seen that life for a while, so we kind of have to imagine what that might be like. Versus now, where we say, pretty much, we're the only ones who have sovereignty. And everything else we get to have our way with, because we're somehow entitled to this, right? So it's not that I can't, it's not that I'm not going to take a life. I have to take a life in order to have my life. Whether it's a beautiful sacred buffalo or a carrot. I'm still going to have to stop that life in order to have my life. But what we're saying with this sovereignty piece is that I have to acknowledge the sovereignty of this other being, and that means that I'm going to have a relationship of some depth with everything whose free will, whose trajectory in this life, they're having their own life, that I interrupt in order to have my life. So it's not saying that we're never going to interrupt anything, but it is saying that if we acknowledge sovereignty, that means that we are going to have to move into a much deeper level of relationship. Now, let's go back to indigenous peoples. So, the reason that I flew from New Mexico 14 hours in the air to come here to Portugal is not because I want to be a cultural show and tell for y'all. I'm sorry, that's not worth it to me. But the reason that I feel like it's important for this voice to be here amongst all the voices that are here is because what I see is that if sustainability is the highest and most sought after technology on the planet, who should we be talking to? We should be talking to those peoples, like I said, who've known how to live in one place over an extended period of time, 1,000 years, 2,000 years, 3,000 years, in relative health, harmony, and happiness. Because friends, that's the proof in the pudding, right? That's saying we know something about sustainability. And so I feel that this is the time, you know, many of my, I attend indigenous peoples gatherings worldwide. It's on for everybody, right? And it's on for us too, so we're meeting. And, you know, my understanding is that there is a prophecy that says one day the world is going to get very, very lost. And the world is going to become hungry for life again. And when that happens, then they're going to turn around and they're going to come and look for us again. For the cultures who have this deep science of sustainability. And so we might also say, for the cultures who have protected and who have held fast to the enactment of these original instructions, right? And so that's asking a lot of everybody, that scenario. It's asking a lot of the people who are feeling lost. It's asking a lot of the people who have been desperately trying to hold on to the laws of life. So I just want us to pause for a moment. To be honest, it asks a lot of me to come and stand here in the middle of Boomfest in Portugal. I'm not sure, I just heard that there was a little debate about this, but the way I was told was that Christopher Columbus came from Portugal and then eventually worked for the Queen of Spain. So to me, this is a very large healing moment that you have somehow agreed to participate in, sitting right here, and that Boomfest has agreed to participate in. For me to be an indigenous woman, invited to come as myself, to Portugal, to speak on these matters. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So I wanted to kind of lay a little groundwork about what we are talking about when we say original instructions. But we got a lot of ground to cover, so. So how do indigenous people have this relationship to place? I understand Boomland has bought their own land, and so they're looking to have a relationship with this place. Now, I've lived in the town I've lived in for 33 years. And by modern world standards, that's a long time to live somewhere. How many people have lived in the place that they currently live in now for longer than 10 years? For longer than 20 years? For longer than 30 years? Like another 30-year out there? A couple, right? So in this modern world life, we're like zooming around, right? Zooming everywhere. But I notice that even being an indigenous person of Taos, New Mexico for 33 years, old timer, that here's an example that might be tangible for us, because it's kind of hard to think about 1,000 years. What does that look like? I don't know. But let's say 33 years. So one thing I notice, I also live in a small town, so that's also part of the dynamic. But when I have a knockdown, drag-out fight with somebody, I mean, I don't literally knock them down anymore, no. No. But when I have a really big fight with somebody, a neighbor or a community member, and we're like, that's it, no more, ever again, and we walk away. Well then, 6, 7 years later, we both had kids, and now we're like bringing cupcakes together for the soccer team, say, for the kids, right? And all of a sudden, there they are. And so we have this place of having to adjust because we have to be examples to the kids. And there's all these factors at play. But what I'm saying is we readjust, we reassess, we find humility in this relationship. And we say, okay, I can allow for the possibility that maybe now you're something different. I know I've changed in the last 6 or 7 years since I had children. All right, let's give it another shot. And then who knows, we might end up being, huge collaborators on behalf of this youth soccer league, right? So what I keep thinking about modern culture is what must it be like to move every 2 or 3 years and never experience this kind of reconciliation? Never experience that humility, that deep gift of humbling yourself that you feel right in here. It feels vulnerable, it feels risky, and it's an essential part of relationship and community too. So if we never have to face that point, I think, wow, we must be really cynical about our relationships, because you can have these massive falling out, never see that person again, and think, dang it, I was still right. I was right. And move on, And so there's a difference. I'm just giving you like a modern day picture of a difference of what it's like to be in place for a while versus a very short while. Now let's go ahead and open up that time span to thousands of years, right? So what I know about that experience is that we make relationship to place, oddly, saying it in this place, through dance, through song, through community gatherings, through shared experience, right? But I want to open that up a little bit broader. So some of you sitting here have heard me say this, but I feel like it's a really foundational piece to understand everything that I'm trying to say to you, everything that I'm being asked to say to you, I should say. This is not stuff I've just dreamt up. So down the road from where I live is this brilliant scholar, native scholar from Santa Clara Pueblo, and his name is Dr. Greg Cajete. And he wrote this book called Native Science. And in this book, he said this amazing thing that rocked my world and changed me forever. He said, this is always interesting saying this in Europe, but here we go. He said, so all of those guys who used to write about indigenous people in North America, they always used the same words. They always used these 2 words. They always said we were childlike and primitive. Now, what I love about Dr. Cajete, and this is the mark of a true elder to me, is he didn't go for that low-hanging fruit. He didn't go right to, what a bunch of racist such and suches. He said, there is a system of thought going on over there that causes these particular people, every time they see us, to use these words. What is it? What is their system of thought that they got going that makes them say this? And so he said, well, let's take a look and see, maybe if I understood them from their culture, I would know. And so he took a look to see who are these guys, because it was guys in that case. And he realized that these were aristocratic Englishmen. And so when he looked at their culture, what he saw was that for them, up until the age of 5, they were allowed to sing and dance and play and pretend. And, have imaginary friends, whatever, like that, right? But at the age of 5, all that had to stop. It could be a hobby, like a very secondary hobby, but from that moment on, the way that they were trained and their primary engagement was to hone the intellect in academia, right? Does that sound familiar to anybody? Me too, right? So that was their life. So think about it. So here come these guys who this is the way it is, right? And they come over and they see us. And what were we doing? We were singing. We were dancing. We were seeing things they could not see. We were having conversations with things that they didn't believe you could have a conversation with. And our grown men were engaged in these activities, right? And so they said, these must be a primitive people. Because even their grown men are engaged in these activities of children. And so that's why they wrote those things about us. Well, when Dr. Cajete said that, boy, that was like lightning striking, kabam, for me, because it's like that explains like 10 million things to me. And so also what that meant for me was that my people, the Dene, and my people, also called Lakota, in our culture, from birth until death, we never stop that song, that dance, that engaging with all these sovereign beings around us, right? And so what I realized is, and that's why I said, when I have to sing that song to really understand what it is I'm supposed to say here. That song is informing me. So the song is a way of knowing. The dance, I've talked to many people here, and they're saying, sometimes I use substance when I'm out there dancing, and sometimes I don't. And even when I don't, I have insight. Things come to me, right? And so maybe people here understand that more than some people I talk to. But for us also, that dance is a way of knowing. And that dance, we say, is a way of letting the Mother Earth know that we are knowing her, that we are seeking her, that we are receiving her, that we are asking for her guidance, that we are asking for her instruction. We are asking to receive her nurturing and nourishing care, right? So that's a very principal way of knowing. And if you'll notice, human beings everywhere on the planet, so these are the indigenous people, right? They all got that going on, don't they? Every single one of them. And is it a coincidence that these same people also have the knowledge of deep sustainability? I don't think so. So this is my own scientific inquiry. And so what I'm putting together is sustainability is intricately connected to having a broad spectrum of ways of knowing. Intellect alone can't do it. Now, intellect is necessary. I'm kind of really tired of intellect, so I kind of bump it aside a lot. But nevertheless, it is necessary. It serves a function, but on its own, it can't create sustainability. And to be honest, I think that's a big part of what we're working with and facing right now. Right? So, the intellect, I've heard it said, the intellect loves to create problems to solve. That's what it loves best. It loves to create problems to solve. And so it's kind of that deal where everywhere it looks, problem to be solved, problem to be solved, problem to be solved. And so it's that thing of, when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Right? You're like, what can I... And so what I would propose to us five-fingered ones sitting here is that if there are these peoples all over the world, in Australia, in South America, in Siberia, in India, everywhere, there they are. They have this long history of ways of knowing, but I believe we have been talked out of it. Well, in some cases, more than just talked out of it. So with that English school system, I know we're not supposed to carry flags and things here, so I'm not really trying to be hard in particular on the English, but in whatever place origin we want to talk about that idea that the real way of knowing anything is through the intellect, and so we're going to just take every kid and put them in a schoolhouse and keep them from dancing and singing too much. And now, even in the United States, creating art, we don't have any money for that. And all we really need is this. And this spread with colonialism, right? So my own family experienced, in this case, it was by the Dutch Christian Reformed Church, the same branch of that church that also went to South Africa, which is a connection I only made recently. I'm like, wait a second. It was the same one. But, my grandparents were kidnapped and taken to residential boarding school. And so it was imposed upon them. You will stop speaking that language, by the way, that language that knows sustainability. You will stop thinking about those things. You will stop that singing. You will stop that dancing. And you will now work on this. So it wasn't just proposed, it wasn't just suggested, it was imposed on much of humanity all over the world, right? So this is a handicap, in my view. This is a handicap that has been imposed upon this incredible species of the five-fingered ones. And we are suffering from it right now. So let's just pause to feel that for a second. So, when I'm here and everywhere I go to propose is, what are we going to do about that? What are we going to do about that? I mean, I have to ask that of myself. What am I going to do about that? I'm third generation down from having my grandparents and parents taken into those schools and forcefully brought away from original instruction, forcefully brought away from that knowing of sustainability. And now here I am. And so what I say, so I've been finding my way back home, right? And so what I say is that's my greatest gift to the world. It didn't seem like it for a long time, but now I understand it is my greatest gift to the world that I can possibly give is to describe my journey going back home. So that's what I do. That's the best thing I know to do. I love you. Thank you. I love me too. But man, has it been some work. Woo! It has been some work. Because I look like I look, and so when people would see me, they would say, oh, you're Native American, aren't you? How do your people do this? And how do they say that? And how do they, and I'm like, here I am, 12 years old, 13 years old. deer in the headlights. At a certain point there, I was actually making things up because it was so awkward and uncomfortable for me, so I apologize. And then I come to my own people, and they see me, and they're like, oh, she is Danae, sure as can be, right? And they walk up to me, and they start talking to me in that beautiful language. Oh my God, that language. And you know what? I love that language so much that I just let them talk for a while. Just take it in. I say it's like, this is a crazy analogy, but you might get it here. I say it's like when Frodo, in the Lord of the Rings, and Frodo gets the blade by one of the ring wraiths, and he's like, and so they send him off with the elf princess, and she's trying to get him back to the elf land, right? And so they finally get there, and then he's getting ready to cross over, and so what does she do? She speaks that elven language to him, right? And that's what keeps him from crossing over, because it's the power of the knowledge of that language. And that's how I feel my language is. Exactly like that. So when my elders come up to me and they recognize me and they speak that language to me, I just drink it up as long as I can. But eventually I have to say, I'm sorry, I don't understand. Oh, it's a hard moment every single time. And you know what makes it harder is, it used to be, it's kind of changing a little bit now, but it used to be 9 times out of 10, they would say, shame on you. Shame on you for not knowing our language. Oof. And I took that shame on. I took it on. Until one day, I said, wait a second. It's not like somebody walked up to me and said, hey, Pat, would you like to learn your people's language? Because I'm right here and I got all kinds of time and I'm willing to teach it to you. Would you like to learn language? And I was like, no, I don't really have time. I'm sorry. I'm kind of working on my soccer game here. So when I realized that, the story of indigenous people in any part of the world is very complex. Very, very complex. And anybody who went to Standing Rock can tell you it was complex, wasn't it? Yeah, it was complex. It's complex. And so, that was when I said, you know what? If I take on that shame and if I try to hide myself, because I didn't have anywhere to go. I had no world to be in when I was in that mindset. But it hit me. If I really go for that, then I will complete the genocide myself. I will complete it. And by God, that's not going to happen. That is not going to happen. And the reason I feel like that part of my story is relevant here is because I'm going to say whatever handicap you believe you were born into and are working with, there is a way to turn it into powerful medicine. So at a certain point, I said, okay, Spirit, because at this point, I had been taken into the Lakota by grace way of life and be put in my first sweat lodges and et cetera. And so I actually had something to pray. I had left the church. And this is something I want to say, even though it's tender ground, because I feel like I witness this in modern world all the time. And I know it because I lived it. I left the church saying, there is something really off here. So this is just me and my story, and maybe it was my church, or maybe it was the missionaries who took my grandparents and parents. So from that point of view, I said, there is something really off here. I'm out of here. And what I see happening a lot in modern world is that's a lot of people's story. And what I get concerned about is they say, well, since I think the church is not legit, real, whatever, then there must be no spirit at all. And so one of my requests, and it's a big one, is can we stop making all spiritual endeavor relative to the church. It's not the church or nothing. I didn't expect to say that, but that's been really coming up for me a lot. So I came into this beautiful Lakota spiritual way of life and finding this like third road between nothing and the church and saying, okay, this is something real. I get to be in my body in this. I get to experience water and fire and stones, and I craved that. I needed that, so I found home there, right? And what ended up happening for me there was to be able to say, all right, Creator, I know that there's a lot of places that I can't help because I'm so deficient, is how I felt. I can't speak my language. I can't tell people about Dene Way. But I sure want to not be a part of genocide, and I sure do want to be a part of Thriving Life Plan. Here I am. What would you do with me? What would you say to me? Where would you have me go? How would you have it be? And Creator said, let me see. Could be an elder woman too. So let's see, you like to run until you drop and then rest, and then run until you drop and then rest, and run. That's part of your characteristic? Okay. You like to talk a lot, clearly. We got work for you. We got work for you. So this isn't a revival or anything, but I just wanted to, somehow I ended up telling you that part of my story. So that's how I end up here. I got more work than I know what to do with. So let's head this way. So what I understand from Lakota way of life is that there is this sacred hoop of life, we say. And on this sacred hoop of life, every single life form has a place. From the platypus, to the dragonfly, to the olive tree, to the cork tree, to you, to me, to every single one of us sitting in here. So everybody has a place on this sacred hoop of life. And every member of this sacred hoop of life has to uphold its part. Now, when a member of this sacred hoop of life does not uphold its part, the integrity of the hoop begins to fail. That's how interrelated we are. As Thich Nhat Hanh says, we are an interbeing. We might say we are a single organism, all of us together, right? And so we are so interconnected. So when one member of the hoop begins to fail, then we start having problems. And I believe that's where we're at today. And who would that member be? Well, I think it's us. I think it's the five-fingered ones. And here's what I think is happening. So if we look out here, even in this dry, hot, I'm sure it's not this way all the time, all year round, but there's some obstacles for life to grow here. I noticed they're growing little forests, little farms, etc. And man, they got to be watering that stuff, right? So it takes some effort to make life grow here. But nevertheless, it is growing here. And in fact, everywhere you go on this Mother Earth, it's doing one thing. Everything is doing one thing. It's trying to figure out how it's going to make more life, more life, more life, more life, more life, more life. Everything. How am I going to make that seed? And so I come to this conclusion. The plan around here, around these parts, known as Earth, the plan is life. The plan is life. It has to be. And every single being out there has a perfect design to uphold its part of the hoop of life. Every single member has a perfect design to live and be a part of this thriving life interbeing. And so what I would propose to you is it just cannot be that we are the only ones who didn't get that design. It cannot be. So therefore, I conclude that we also have a thriving life design. But I'm not sure we're using it. We've been talked out of it in 1,000 different ways, including this guy up here. So we've been talked out of this idea that we also have a design of thriving life. So that's been a huge part of my inquiry, is asking, how am I working with my design for thriving life, and how am I working against my design for thriving life? Now, there's lots of different possibilities for looking at this question, but what I decided to do was to ask, all right, and even more specifically, what does it mean to be a female of the five-fingered ones? What is my special function? Well, what I know from my indigenous spiritual practice is that my biology actually gives me spiritual capacity. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that from the feminine side of town here. So early on in my spiritual practice, I was told that when I was menstruating, when I was on my moon time, that I needed to go sit in a different place from everybody else. Now, right away, my American girl is like, I know my rights. You know, my ears prick up, right? Are we talking about like gender discrimination here? Because if we are, get ready. So that's my modern world training, right, is to say that. But what I also got to notice in this ancient culture practice is there were several instances in which genders were called on. And I will also say that there is a spectrum of genders held by traditional culture as well. Right now I'm talking in a little bit of a binary, so I apologize to anybody here who doesn't identify that way. But we have to start somewhere. And so I kind of went along with it. You know, when we were getting into the sweat lodge, they'd say, all the women you're going to get in first, and then all the men come next. And I was like, there it is again. But I kind of went with it for long enough to find out that there is a difference between us. So, and part of it is a spiritual capacity. So I'm going to fast forward quite a bit here. But when I spent time in the Moon Lodge with other women, so again, right, my biology can give me a clue, because what I say is that we haven't been on this deathway path for so long that our biology has mutated to begin to accommodate it. So my biology is still trying to do everything it can to say, hey, this is the way to life, right? And so my biology can tell me a lot about the thriving life way. So what does it mean that when women all get together and hang out together in community, what happens to their menstruation? We all start cycling together. Holy smokes. That's a big clue for us, isn't it? I mean, that's magical stuff. That's mysterious stuff. So what I came to find is that when women do spend that time together, they have an ability to Okay, a couple of things. So if the plan is life, right? That material that is coming from their body, we say that they are dismantling the holy altar of life. And so that material is holy and it is sacred. And as I was telling this with some women in Mexico, they were saying that they understood that in their culture a long time ago, the women would walk with nothing on and they would bleed as they walked. And the men would reach down and touch that blood and bless themselves with it because it was so sacred and so powerful and so holy. We're kind of a long way from that. Because in modern world, right, we're not supposed to let anything show. We were supposed to hide it. We're not supposed to talk about it. We're supposed to act like nothing is happening. So, what I discovered in being with other women, opening and saying to this Mother Earth, Mother, I'm offering you one of the highest offerings that human beings can give to you. Because if the plan is life, that very, very beginning of our life, that's holy, right? So to give that to this Mother Earth is a super high offering. In fact, I would say the only other offering as high as that one is our body when we die. And right now we're withholding both of those from her. But, so I can say this to our mom. I was also taught that that gateway inside of my body, that gateway between heaven and earth, biology calls it the cervix. When that opens, I am drawing in. And that's actually the reason why I shouldn't be around the other parts of the ceremony. So here are all these people doing many things, giving their highest, strongest effort, also making very high offerings on behalf of life. And they're calling in for that power to come to humanity, for solution to come to humanity, for comfort to come to those children who are being detained on the borders, for the women who are being persecuted, for everything that's taking place in Palestine and Israel. And all of those things, we're calling in that power. And it is coming, and it is coming, and it is coming. But we say that the woman on her moon time is so powerful that if she is present with this gateway open, that instead of that power going where it needs to go, it ends up going to her. And that's not what we want. We have a better way of taking care of this. So we give her her own place to pray, and she has this incredible opportunity to then commune with this Mother Earth and say, Mom, I'm here. I'm giving you this offering, not just on behalf of me, not just on behalf of the women, so that we can outsmart the men, but on behalf of all of us, on behalf of the elders and the children, 7 generations back, 7 generations forward. I'm making this offering to you, Holy Mother, Mother who gives everything we need to take care of everyone we love. Mother, I'm giving it to you. And I open myself to you. And in this exchange of me giving to you and me also having this incredible ability to draw in, Mom, I am asking for your nurturing, for your nourishment. Now we say that the woman is the backbone of the community. We say that the woman is the backbone of the family. We also say, that my daughter is a poet, and she said it this way, very short poem. She says, the Choctaw have said all there is to say. You have not defeated my people until the hearts of our women are on the ground. That gives every single one of us sitting here something to keep in our sights at all times. We must not let the hearts of the women hit the ground. So how does she be this backbone of the family? How does she be the backbone of the community? Well, during her moon cycle time, she draws in this nurturing and nourishment from the Mother Earth, from the Mother, to sustain her, to help her to be this for community, for life, on behalf of our kind. There's more. There's so much more. But one thing I want to be sure to say is the other thing that she has the ability to do is she has the ability to receive direct instruction from the Mother Earth about how to be here. We could use a little bit of that right now, can't we? So we said that the women would, the spiritual leaders, the elder women, would harvest the dreams of the women who were gathered all together, menstruating at the same time together in the Moon Lodge. And those dreams were used for guidance for the whole community. I hope you can understand, and I hope you can have a sense of humor when you hear me say this, but when I hear about equal rights for women, I'm like, equal to what? It's not about equality. We're very different in our functions. Equality meaning the same. No, 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 no. So, now we come to the sacred masculine part of things, because it's very important for us to talk about that. So, when I am in the Moon Lodge, I go super dreamy. Super, super dreamy. I am no longer functioning in a linear cause and effect way. And I'm not supposed to be. And I will tell you now, I have passed that time, as you may have guessed. And I'm going through my elder woman life change. And our people have our primary spiritual elder of women, her name is Changing Woman. And now I get it. I'm like, yeah, Changing Woman is right. I'm going through changes, and I'm meant to. I'm meant to be going through all these changes, exactly as this earth does, going through her seasons, going through her orbits, going so many changes. I'm reflecting her, she's reflecting me, right? So I'm going through these changes, and what I was told about that time of life is that they told me, you're going into labor again. And I'll tell you, it feels like it. You're going into labor again, and this time you're birthing yourself. You're birthing yourself as the fruitful woman on behalf of your community. Now we think of the fruitful woman as being the childbearing woman, but that's only one kind of fruitfulness. I have many different kinds of fruitfulness. And think about it. So if I had known that I could commune with the Mother Earth from my first moon time at age 11, and I stopped having my moon time somewhere around age 38. So it's like 27 years of months, every month, consulting and communing with this Mother Earth. Fruitful? You bet I'm fruitful. You bet I am fruitful for having been a bearer of dreams, instruction, understanding of how to be here on behalf of my people for all those months. By the time I get this kind of silvery hair, I am one of the most valuable assets of my community. Now, I'm not seeing a whole lot of gray hair ladies out there, but a few. But that's going to become more meaningful for you young women as time goes by, I assure you. So hold on to that. Because this world doesn't recognize that. This world has not been on the thriving life pathway for a long time. So we have to reflect it to each other. I was told, you are responsible for placing yourself before the truth frequently. No one else is responsible. You are. You are responsible for placing yourself before the truth frequently, because we're highly vulnerable to repetition, which obviously advertising is well aware of. So we have to repeat truth to ourselves because we are surrounded by lies, in the sense of we are surrounded by things that are not leading us to thriving life. For me, truth equals life. If it's heading for life, then we're talking about truth. And if it's not, then we're talking about lies. So, in that place of the moon time, in this place of being in labor, when I was actually in labor, the 3 times to birth my amazing children, I was extremely vulnerable. And the more I began to engage, I want to also say, before everybody goes running out and begins to consult their moon, I imagine there's many women here who are already doing that, but it will change your world. It will not settle for back seat anymore. If you acknowledge it in a sacred way and say, was you're on your moon time, Mom, I am coming to you, and I'm acknowledging that we can have this exchange, and I ask you for it, she will not let up on you from then. She will not let you pretend nothing is happening. It will interrupt your life. So be careful, but do it anyway. I went to my first job interview after really getting deep into this knowledge, and I told them I will not be here 4 days out of the month. And I can't tell you exactly what 4 days they'll be. But you will not regret it. Because the gifts I can bring will be useful to you. And they hired me. Because I had to do something. She wasn't letting me ignore her. She wouldn't let me hide her anymore. So I keep trying to get to this part I want to say to the men. So, my brothers, holy men's nation, you are so holy. And I did not know that for the longest time in my life. You were my competition. You were what held me back from what I thought I was supposed to want and have. But when I began to attend to this part of my perfect design for thriving life, to be honest, I started losing interest in what you were doing, your side of things. In the ceremonies where I had been fighting to be a woman, right in there with you, I lost interest in that. There is no place I would rather be when we're praying together than sitting in the moon lodge, anchoring our ceremony into the earth and consulting with the Mother Earth on behalf of all of us. And if you want to do all that other part, I can only just be grateful to you. Thank you for doing that for all of us too, your part. I lost interest in being out there. I had so much to attend to here, I couldn't attend to both. I didn't want to. So when I'm in those states that I am designed to be in, it's no joke. I need your protection. I need you to protect me in that vulnerable state. I also need you to provide for me in that vulnerable state. So we say that those are characteristics of the sacred masculine, is providing and protecting, right? Now I want to acknowledge that in this modern world scenario, that's probably not good news to a lot of men. Wait, I'm supposed to provide and protect for you. I want to tell you that my prayers and my heart is with you in this setup. We live in a power over paradigm. In order to have success in this paradigm, you have to have power over another. You have to beat someone out in order to have what you need. It is not a system that is conducive to collaboration and cooperation. And so in a power over paradigm, might makes right. And that means whoever has physically got the more brute strength, they're going to be on top. And that's why we see the men in this part of the pyramid up here. Because even though now we pretend like we're civilized, that cutthroat way of competition is still going on in that pyramid. And that violence is implied. And we all feel it in our instinctual knowing. Watch out in there. So I say to my brothers, to my nephews, I say, I am worried about you in there because that system is rigged. You were never meant to win in there. Only these guys were meant to win in there. And now we're seeing that evidence. Maybe that way looked like it was working for your grandfather. Maybe it even looked like it was working for your father. But now we are beginning to see the truth of it. It does not work. And you are not meant to win in there. And if you keep trying, because that was the way you were told to be a man, is to succeed in there, I'm scared for you. I'm afraid you're going to get broken in there. And I need you to be whole. So bad. I need you to be whole. So lately I've been saying, maybe in the end, it's been a good thing that the women have been kept out of there. We keep trying to bust in. I did. And we were held out. And what that has done for Women's Nation is it has forced us to begin to make pathways to circumnavigate that system. In the town I live in, we got probably the highest population of single moms on the planet. I don't know, but it's big. And so we have had to create networks of support for and with each other in order to make our lives work. And I'm going to say that we have we have begun something that I believe pretty soon here, if not right this minute, the whole world is going to need to do. So that's what we have done. So we've made the beginning. So lately I've been saying to my brothers, hey, come on down out of there. So we need to come out of this pyramid and we need to see if we can remember how to make that circle again. And so I have an engineering brother, and he's heard me talk about this a few times. He goes, Pat, I've heard you say that probably 3 times, and I just got it. This is an engineering problem. He goes, so I get it now. So let's say I am literally in a pyramid structure, and somehow what I have to do is design the way to redesign the pyramid as I am in it and turn it into a circle. He goes, I can do that. You just wait. I'm going to tell you how this works. So I'm waiting. So what I want to say to the Men's Nation is that I apologize, one, for not being able to see you and honor you. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what my thriving life design was. And so there was no way in the world I could know what your thriving life design was. So Eve Ensler said recently at Bioneers, I go to Bioneers in the United States. It's a powerful, powerful place of awakening and dreaming and thinking about things in a new way. But she was saying, because we are story-based beings, when we don't have a narrative for something, it becomes largely invisible to us. And so what I'm going to say is we have begun to have a narrative with women's groups, goddess, indigenous cultures, etc. We've begun to have a narrative for sacred feminine. But what I'm going to propose to you is we have almost no narrative for sacred masculine. And I'm going to say, consequently, it is largely invisible to us. But it does not mean that it is not there. So I have been working on some things about the language for the sacred masculine. So here goes. I call you sometimes my protector and my provider, and that's sincere. And I pray for you, even knowing what you're up against in this time. And I acknowledge it's not easy to call you that. But I receive you and I honor you that way. I call you the waker of the dreaming egg. And as you protect that dreamer, and as you provide for her when she's in that place, this is not to say that men don't have visions or dreams, they do, but I feel like this is a proclivity of the feminine to be able to do this. And so as you're protecting that space for the dreamer, for the visions to come from the women, Ilarion Merculif, the hereditary spokesperson for the Aleut nations, who was trained by his elder women, I love those people. They are some really incredible people. They can tell the weather by watching a seagull fly for 2 weeks. So they're tuned in, right? And he says that what he was told to say to the world is the womb of the woman is connected to the womb of the cosmos. And until the women remember that, nothing new is going to be born on this earth. So, what you are protecting is sacred. I just can't believe that you would be inclined to protect until you know what you are protecting, and that's why I said what I said in front of you. So you are a protector, provider, you're the waker of the dreaming egg, and as these dreams begin to emerge, I see you also as the sacred architect of the visions of the people. You, as my engineer friend came forth and said, you're architecting and engineering. Now, important thing to know about that role is the dreamer, the vision keeper, the vision tender, the vision shepherdess knows how it's supposed to feel. She might not know how it's going to get from point A to point B. Maybe she does, in which case you might want to stand back. But she knows how it's supposed to feel. And feeling has not been valued in our culture. Feeling is so powerful related to life, okay? And so the architects and engineers of the vision have to be willing to humble themselves before the way the vision is supposed to be enacted in the way that it feels. So when she says, it's not feeling right, I think we need to make it round, and you're like, no way. That's going to cost X, it's going to be this much more time, it's going to have this. You know, we're learning how to have these languages, to hear each other. We have to develop the language. They gave me my 5-minute sign. I was waiting for my 30-minute sign, so I'm going to have to, I'm not ending where I want to end, but let me, I was praying one time in ceremony, and I was asking about masculine and feminine, and I was saying, what do we really mean when we say masculine? And what do we really mean when we say feminine? Like if we were to take away, because those words have so much baggage now, and they're very confusing to us. And there's culture, and there's power, and there's, what do we really mean when we say that? And they said, well, that's a great question. The spirit helper said that to me. They said, because you think you know what masculine is, and you don't. And you think you know what feminine is, but you don't. All you know is how the masculine and feminine, how those energetics behave in a power over paradigm. But those medicines, those energetics behave differently in other paradigms. And I'm going to suggest to you that there are living cultures in the world who live under other paradigms. And they have some clues for us about how masculine and feminine dynamic can work together to once again enact our design for thriving life. So tomorrow at 5:15, from 5:15 to 6:15, I'm convening a talking circle in the NGO sphere, which is, I don't know what direction, like right over there. It's the geodome, yellow and orange and red. And we're going to continue this. Now we're going to have, I know I'm going over time here, so
Don't worry.
Well.
Stay for more time.
So what I want to just briefly explain about the talking circle is this. I don't know how many people are going to remember or want to go to that tomorrow, but in case there's a lot of us, what we say about it is it's not just the speakers who are speaking. We call in our ancestral line to come in and also give voice there. We also say that people, because I've been in part of talking circles with quantum physicists, linguists, and indigenous peoples. We used to have NASA and Nobel Prize laureates in physics come, and we had 24 seats, but we had this massive, quote, audience listening. But we say that they are also informing that circle. So we're going to ask for 13 other people besides myself and two kind of space holders to sign up, and that sign up is going to be available at 4:45 at the NGO Dome. So if you want to be one of those people who are going to voice on these subjects, we're going to continue this tomorrow. And let's see, is there anything else I need to say about that? I think that's it. So I just love you so much. I'm appreciating this way of trying to expand the ways of knowing that's going on over here. You're informing me. I hope that I can inform this process also a little bit. And I just want to say that I trust you. I trust you completely. You came here for purpose. I came here for purpose. We're going to enact our purpose. We're going to bring ourselves back to that thriving life way. And so, wopila, yeah.
Before you go anywhere, Mother, you can stick.
Sovereignty. Great question. Well, yeah. Well, I'll tell you who you don't want to ask is don't ask the U.S. government what is sovereignty. They don't know jack about it. Because we're supposed to be sovereign nations. And there's some problems going on there. So here's how I look at sovereignty. So again, like say that we have a being, even a butterfly, even so one thing to know about it is my elders said that we five-fingered ones were the last ones to arrive here on this Mother Earth. And that means that all of the other life forms are our elders. And so all of the other life forms are saying, okay, we all got to pitch in together and help raise these babies up right. And so that's one way that I look at this sovereignty, is also looking at it as these elders. So if I have an elder beetle crossing the way, it's not for me to just go and, right? That's my elder. Even the lizards, you know, we say grandma, grandpa, lizard. You'll hear indigenous people say this everywhere in the world, right? And they're like, this elder, this grandmother or elder butterfly coming my way has something. So I have to treat it with respect because it's here to help me understand how to live. And so we give all those ones their trajectory, their lifespan, their purpose for upholding this sacred hoop of life. So maybe we can work with that as a definition of sovereignty.
My question is about the adaptation of spiritual practices from native people. For example, sweat lodges in the Lakota tradition, and of the word aho. I have heard that these adaptations have been criticized by indigenous peoples, and I want to ask, what do you know about that critics, and what is your own opinion about adapting those spiritual elements into our New Age culture?
Thank you. So you're kind of talking about appropriation, it sounds like. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. Gosh, I hate that question, but here we go. So, I mean, it's a tough question, and it's a great way to get in trouble. So first of all, I think it helps to understand where it's coming from. Why the sensitivity? Like really, really sensitive, right? And that has to do with, of course, attempted genocide. And so, our land was taken. Our children were taken forcibly out of our arms in a way and put in schools, and their bar of soap was stuffed in their mouth so they wouldn't speak our language. There's been some pain and suffering gone on here. So what do we have left? I mean, I can't even say that some people say, well, at least we have our culture and they'll never take that from us. I couldn't even say that. So there is this sense of wanting to hold on to something that is ours. So, have compassion when you get confronted with that fierce, you're appropriating. That's where it's coming from, right? My daughter wrote a great poem about this. I wish I'd known. I should have realized that question would come up. And, some of our elders do talk about it this way. And I can't give this carte blanche. It's not for me to say for any people or their way or what they hold. But she said, how do we hold on to what the stars gave us? How do we hold on to what the buffalo gave us? How do we hold on to, these worlds in our fingertips? How do we get to be the owners of those things that were given to us freely by these elders? So I will be honest, from my perspective, I lean a little bit more that way. So I would say, it's good to receive permission whenever possible. And yet, even when you go to receive permission, you could talk to a very sort of militant person, and they would say, oh, hell no, you just leave it alone. And then you could talk to another elder of the same people. It's also kind of by generation. And the old people were a lot more open about many things. In fact, I was told that, if we had a non-indigenous, a European descent person come to our ceremony a long time ago, it was considered a strengthening of the ceremony to have their lineage come and support. So we're kind of all over the board over this, and this is something that one of those challenges that the intellect wants to know, is this right, is this wrong? But it's more of a feeling and a relational piece. And that's about what I know to say about it right here and right now. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Han, and I'm a midwife, which is an interesting profession.
Yeah.
And,
Honorable profession.
Oh yeah, totally. I'm very honored to be a midwife indeed. But I see things like childbirth or just being pregnant and giving birth to new life. Guys, I just see it go so in a direction that I don't want it. It's so far from nature where we're going to. I try to get it back to how it is supposed to be, but I'm just wondering, in your community, how do you give birth to your children?
Well, so again, very complex. So at a certain point, now the U.S. government has been pretty schizophrenic. We might say it still is. But in the sense that originally the outward plan was, let's just kill them all. It wasn't a secret. It wasn't like some CIA covert action. It was just like out there. And then all of a sudden it was like the US government got a conscience somewhere in it. And they're like, okay, well, maybe not. Maybe we should assimilate them all. And so they started this program, again, not covert. And they called it the Kill the Indian, Save the Man program. Like flat out, that's what they called it. And that meant, we're going to assimilate all these indigenous people into our way of being and then problem solve. Oh, we're also going to have to take your land. And that's where that sovereignty thing comes up, is they actually are what's the word? They hold our lands in trust because we wouldn't really know how to manage land. So along with that weird change of conscience, they decided as some kind of compensation, is what I've heard recently. I've been wanting to look this up, so I don't really know the reasoning that they gave, but they ended up giving us, quote, free health care. So free health care is Western medicine care. In my experience, so we have an Indian health service, we call it. And so when I go into Indian health service, my experience is you go in and you come out with a big white bag of free pills, no matter what you got going on, which is kind of the case in many Western medicine offices, at least in the US. And so the same way, childbirth was then taken over by Western medicine, by and large, for many indigenous people. And I remember talking to some elder women, and they said that when it first started coming around, it was kind of like the prestigious thing to do was to go into the hospital rather than do it the traditional way. So again, we're human. We're all humans. We're all working with all this, like, woo, ourselves. As my clan grandfather used to say, he said, so here we are, holy earth surface walkers. That's what, in our language, we translate human beings. Holy earth surface walkers, dazzled by creation, coming upon temptation. And he was talking about Dene as much as anybody, right? So that's our nature. So what I can say is in my area, there is a deep revitalization of our midwifery practices that's coming around again. And it's different tribes collaborating and putting pieces together of how we used to do it and how we might do it again. But unfortunately, a lot of that has been destroyed with this Western medicine piece. No. Here's someone here.
So my question is, I come from Sri Lanka. My parents come, and so we were colonized by 3 different people: the Dutch, and the Portuguese, and then the British. And so at the moment, though we have Ayurveda, we have Hinduism, and all these knowledge is put as a religion, but though it has a lot to do with shamanistic practices or practices which are indigenous. And I think I'm one of the first people from my tribe or from my people who's again tracing back or going back home. So I was like in tears listening to you because from the time I understood that I couldn't fit in, I'm an engineer, I couldn't fit in the system, and the competition wasn't working. I've been finding a way to go back to my land, but I can't go back to Sri Lanka because of the genocide there between the minority and the majority, and because my mom was killed and my father was imprisoned. And my question is because I don't want to be indigenous, because then I will create a sort of separation between other people. I mean, I'm indigenous, so I know something, so now listen to me. But I would like to know how I can make an indigenous movement for my people, also but more inclusive, because now at the moment I'm in the land which is called Belgium, and I'm trying to bring in indigenous knowledge, and I'm starting with my home, where I tell them to remove the shoes before entering the house, because this is a holy place. Don't smoke tobacco, because tobacco is death, it kills, so therefore keep it outside of the boundaries of the home. Try to use sustainable ways of living within the house and have communications which are non-violent, and avoid the spirit, alcohol within the house limits. And most of the time they think that this is a law of me restricting them, but my intention was more like giving them an opportunity to access other ways of spirituality. And I use engineering, so I said to them, I'm helping you to push your limits, to come up with innovative ways to access spirit or spirituality, because for them they avoid spirituality because of Christianity and the church. And I'm struggling because I'm in the same path, but I don't have a support system. I think in this festival there's another Sri Lankan Tamil I met who lives in Swiss, and he couldn't even, I speak the language, I read and write the language, he couldn't even do it. Because, when he heard me speaking, he was like, oh wow, it's a beautiful language, but I can't talk like you. And I was kind of heartbroken because I don't know what to do. Where am I I don't have elders to tell me what to do. And the people there are dead or, yeah, so. I know, so.
So Thank you. Thank you. So, well, first of all, I think you've done something here just by explaining the dilemma. Because maybe the people sitting in here, when they encounter this with indigenous people, the pain and the complexity, but also the joy, you know, they might make a different move than they would have otherwise. When they see they have a chance to back off or move in and help or whatever is appropriate in the moment. So that's partly why I tell my story, because people know it as again intellectually, but you have to feel it. You have to feel it in the body. So we just felt what you just said. You know, I think part of your question relates to something that I think about a lot, which is this idea of homogenizing humanity, which was, I guess, somehow the plan. And so like for instance, I think about this in terms of gender. So here I am heading into dangerous territory, but I feel like people will say, you know, gender, there's no such thing as gender. Gender is a human cultural construct. So this is sort of like the raging thing going around the world right now. And coming from where I come from, explaining what I just explained to you about my understanding coming out of an ancient culture is, I'm like, well, okay, but there are people who menstruate and there are people who don't menstruate. And that's maybe a safe place for me to talk about gender. Right? And the people who menstruate have this particular thing they can do. So that's not a cultural construct. And so I've been thinking about, now why are we so intent on this? And I think it's because we are really afraid of diversity. Because we think we think diversity only brings conflict and war. And I've also had people come up to me, just well-meaning as can be, after I had a talk like this, and they say, I can't wait till we're all just light brown. And I'm like, say what? And what they're really saying is, I can't wait until we've all interbred so much that we don't have any distinguishing cultural markings. And I know the reason that they're saying that is because they're really wishing we could get over the war that diversity brings. And so, I guess for myself, I feel like that's in part that has to do with not being connected to place, to the land. Because like we have neighboring tribes, and we've had some of them around for thousands of years. We've been neighbors. And yet we have never felt the need to absorb them into our culture or be absorbed into their culture, right? So there are ways that we have known how to be this way. And part of that had to do with the land over here between our four sacred mountains tells us how to be in a certain way. But you, for instance, the Hopi, they live like on this island inside of our territory, and they have forever. But you live on these mesas, and you're encountering earth guardian spirits in a whole nother way over here. And they're telling you about a whole nother language. I mean, their whole language is completely different than ours. And so we can observe, wow, so that's how you maintain thriving life where you are, because that's one thing we do have in common is we're both looking at life. And so we say, wow, that's how you do it, and this is how we do it. So it's interesting, but it's nothing to go to war over necessarily. Not to say that indigenous peoples don't have their squabbles, they definitely do. And even historically, but there is a way to do this. So I think part of the general, there's a million things came up as you were talking, but in a general way, I will say that I don't think we can't hope that we become non-diverse. Our science says that diversity is the key to having healthy life, and that's also true for us. So for us, we can also say it's a blessing. We can even say if we can have our own five-fingered hoop and all these different cultures are sitting around on this hoop, and to look look at something in the center, like even if we're all looking at this video camera, we're all going to see something different, and we get to describe it to each other. So we get to describe to each other, what is this thriving life thing? And for a long time, I feel like we had peoples, maybe more peoples doing this than not, who spent their time not trying to figure out how to keep the whole world from collapsing like we're doing right now, but instead dreaming up ways to go, and some of you do this here, going from festival to festival to festival, right? But to go from ceremony in which everybody is brought together, we all make the food together, we all do the preparations together, it's such hard work, we're up late, we're doing this, and then we all come together and feel that spirit move through all of us dancing in unison. Nobody's trying to look the best, we're just trying to be together and let this earth feel our feet and our song. And we're doing that, right? And then, whew, we get done. And we're in this elation. And then we sit down and feast together. And then it's like, well, next week we have that marriage. Let's get busy. And we go to the next one. Right? Like, we used to live like that. Some of us still do. But what kind of life was that? I just want to have us have that feeling, right? Sometimes I do that. I search my DNA, right? I use my DNA as, or I call upon, I'm trying to watch my language there with the sovereignty thing. I call upon my DNA to say, take me to that place that my spirit, my body, the humans have known when we used to know how beautiful diversity was. And let me feel it in my body for just a minute. So that I can walk around in this world that has forgotten thriving life and be a remember. That's one of the ways I can place myself before the truth frequently. There's a lot of folks, a lot of people who've spoken on this stage who understand a place where you can place yourself in front of truth, right? So nature always, the water always, acknowledging this one. That's why I put this here. This is the elder sitting here amongst us.
May I have a sip?
No, not yet. In a minute. I wanted to there was one little piece that I think is important for our discussion. So about this power over paradigm. I often preface a discussion on gender by talking about the power over paradigm, because I want us to also realize that in that power over paradigm, that's no joke, man. If that's the paradigm we are collectively choosing to live in, and the Spirit has told me, hey, you can have it any way you want it. You guys could choose a different paradigm like that, if you wanted to. But right now you're saying you want to live in this. And that's because we've been talked out of the idea that we have any choice about that, but we do. We do. We absolutely do. So, but in that power over paradigm, which is no freaking joke, because whoever has the power also gets to have food, clothing, and shelter. And if you take a look around this world, here we are in Europe, and here I am in the United States, we're first world nations, that the consequences of all this have not come to visit us just yet, but you can be sure there are places, Sri Lanka, places in the United States, these islands of reservation, and other places where the consequence of those actions are on the people. They cannot find clean water. They do not get to choose between awa singas, awa kungas, maybe from glaciers, maybe from, no. They're just trying to find a clean drink of water. Their food is not clean. There are those who are already suffering the consequences of this life. And I was told we're not supposed to feel ashamed of where we are, but we need to recognize where we are and use the fact that we have clean water, because that affects our mental capacity. There again, we do need this intellect to do certain things. We have mental capacity to make choices. And so what kind of choice are we going to make given the privilege that we have of clean air, clean water, and clean food, right? So it matters what happens in this power over paradigm. So in a power over paradigm, we become hyper vigilant about where the power is. And that's also part of this diversity issue. Because whenever someone says, why do all the brown people get this and we don't get it? Or why do all the white people get this and we don't get it? We're saying, and even when I talk about gender, when I say equal to what, the men might be saying, "Whoa, are you like bumping into the little bit of power that I got going here? Because if you are, I gotta watch out for you. I'm not sure I like that." Right? So every time we have these discussions of coming together, we gotta recognize we're bumping into that fear that comes up in the power over paradigm. So just be aware of that. We're hyper vigilant around power. But what we're not realizing is it's the coming together. It's survival of the collaborative. It's the survival of the cooperative, not the survival of the fittest. It never has been. Science is now verifying it, if that helps you. And so coming together is the power.
I'm going to ask you something. Could you all, because you were doing it before, but I want to ask you to do it without applauding. Could you all rise and stand up and acknowledge? I think we need to acknowledge you. Amazing.
Thank we. Take a good look at us, Holy Mother Earth. Take a good look at us, Creator. Take a good look at us, Holy Community of Life. Whatever spiritual community is here, take a good look at us and see that we are willing. We are willing. We come before you. We humble ourselves before life. We humble ourselves before each other. We are willing. See us. We want to live. We want to live, huh? We want to live. We want to live. We do this so that the people can live, because we want to live with our relatives. We want to thrive with all of our relatives. We want to live. That's why we do this. Oh. Itakuyasin for all my relations.
Woman, stand shining. Thank you so much for coming all the way over here and sharing all your wisdom and your beauty. Thank you.